What's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to your Sunday night live stream. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by a fellow Lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, and of course, my good friend, esteemed colleague, the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my man Jeff Howe as well, joining us here on the Sunday night live stream. Usually, it'd be Bobby and Jerry, but Bobby and Jerry out today. Nothing wrong. They'll be back for coffee and football tomorrow, bright and early for you at 8:15. But right now, we got a hell of a all-star team for you for the Sunday night live stream. We'll get into the latest commitments that the Longhorn fans, I'm sure right now, are really excited about. The Longhorns getting two commitments over this weekend, Rodney Cleveland and Richard Wesley, the edge prospect from the West Coast. So we'll talk about both of those and get into that conversation. But the conversation is really whatever you guys want to talk about. Questions, comments, throw them out there. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. Super chats, jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. Just throw out a super chat. We'll also talk about the official visitors that were on campus this past weekend, big recruiting weekend for the Longhorns, and we'll talk about if we expect any other decisions to be made by these prospects that came in for the Longhorns. So we'll talk about that, and of course, Texas football. Kevin Durant to the Rockets. I'm sure y'all can talk about that if y'all want to. NBA Finals Game 7. Throw that out there. We can talk about that if y'all want to as well. But first, let's dive into the big news, gentlemen. The Longhorns just hours ago get the commitment of Richard Wesley, edge prospect out of California. And some people are saying that he's one of the highest rated edge prospects in recent years out of California. Reclassified. He's one of those reclassified guys as well, right? From 27 to 26. I'll throw it out to you first, CJ, before we dive into other topics. Let's talk about this one, Richard Wesley. What are your thoughts about him as a prospect, and also how this all went down?
Yeah, talk about reclassification. Look, normally when you see guys reclass, they don't stay 5 stars. Matthew got the cannonball gift ready. It was a big splash for Steve Sarkisian and the staff today. Alan Clark doing some good work as well. 6'5", 250 pounds. I mentioned reclassed. Still a top 15 player in the country, and that's very rare for guys that move up a grade, right? Texas last year for Zealous Hicks at the time was a 2026 5-star. He reclassed to 2025, ends up being a top 75, top 80 player in the country. Still really darn good, but it's tough to see that reclassification end up being consistent with overall rankings. But Wesley, 6'5", 250, ran 11.5 in the track in the 100-meter. Pretty ridiculous there. He's got some long arms. He's got great get off, and he's violent. And that's something that I think just translates all the way around. 9 sacks his freshman year, 9 sacks his sophomore year. Again, a guy that Texas just is continuing to stack at the edge position. And he was committed to Oregon at one point. That's where we got the cannonball splash gif and joke from. Of course, decommitted from the Ducks earlier, took an official visit to Oregon June 6th, was at Texas this weekend, and was scheduled to take an official visit to Ohio State August 30th. And we'll see if that visit is still on. But ultimately, this is a 5-star win for Texas on the defensive front, and this is a heck of a talent moving forward for the Longhorns. So quite the get for Texas. And Jeff, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's a continuation of what we've seen Texas target at the edge position.
Yeah, I was, just doing some browsing on Richard Wesley as a prospect. I saw Greg Biggins over 24/7 Sports said he's the best, believes Wesley's the best edge prospect the state of California has produced since Kayvon Thibodeau back in 2019. So that lets you know the caliber of guy you're getting. Look, I think this boils down to you're seeing from, an NIL/salary cap resources standpoint, where Steve Sarkisian and this staff are really going to devote the lion's share of their resources. They're going to do it to guys who can, number one, protect the quarterback, and number two, get after the quarterback. They're going to take care of the lines of scrimmage. They're not going to cut any corners when it comes to interior defensive linemen, edge guys. I think some of that even can bleed over to off-ball linebacker a little bit too, because those guys have some pass rush ability also. But yeah, I think that's where, to me, Rod, I think the Sark staff looks at, okay, if they want to win an SEC championship, what's the biggest hurdle in their way? Right now, you probably say the biggest hurdle is Georgia. The type of defense that Sark and PK are building, with Richard Wesley as a piece of that, it looks a lot like the defenses that Kirby Smart and Nick Saban built at Alabama, Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp have built at Georgia. A lot of just violent, quick twitch guys that can be disruptive up the field. So I think that's where they're devoting their resources. That's what they're trying to build. And Wesley's a heck of a prospect, man. Like I said, we talked about the athleticism at his size, the fact that a reclassification, so he's a young guy. And look, you're coming up that 26 season is going to be interesting because that's Colin Simmons' draft eligible season. So that's right about the time you're going to need to really reload. So hopefully in 2027, Wesley and whoever the other edge rushers you add in this class, those interior defensive linemen, hopefully those guys are ready to go and step up in that 27 season.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That Kayvon Thibodeau thing and that comparison, and also the stats that goes along with it, that he's the highest rated prospect to come out of California since then. What was Thibodeau, top 5 pick? What was he?
Yeah, Thibodeau went in the top 5. Yeah, his NFL career hadn't worked out, but I mean, as
a prospect, we talking about his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna go with the Giants.
Hey man, I got drafted by the Giants. Don't be hating on the Giants, CJ. All right, don't be hating on. But I'm talking about because I like to at times my own little. This is my own little thing. So I'm not saying other people should do it or there's any science to this. But I like to, when I do comparisons to prospects or players, give me an upside with the kind of the highest upside of that player would be of comparison. And that maybe that's Kayvon Thibodeau, guy that can get drafted top 5, top 10. And I try to think like what the kind of the average of a player with that specific skill set, those types of high level traits, what it would be, and also kind of what the floor would be. What I see is kind of what maybe the average of a player like him. He kind of he's twitchier than Cedric Reed, but he's got a lot of Cedric Reed in him in terms of his frame and a lot of his movement as a player. That's not bad, by the way, as an average, because that guy ended up with a double-digit sack season at Texas. So he wasn't a scrub by any means. He ended up undrafted, but wasn't a scrub. So my point is, I think the upside is tremendous for this young man. And even I think his floor is really high because of some of the different traits that he has, the first and second step that are really, really good that could end up being high-level BGO. I love the way that he uses his hands as a player. And with all of these things being said about him, he's reclassifying. So the upside is even higher because he's younger, and he'll be a younger guy that will probably, be someone that'll be on an accelerated rate of development, but he's starting to look like a prodigy potentially for Texas coming in. If he's one of those, if he can maintain his ranking, like you said, CJ, even after reclassifying, even as a younger guy, just shows you what kind of high-end potential he has as a player.
Yeah, I totally get it. And look, Jeff, you mentioned it. Look, younger guy coming in on that same trajectory of what a Colin Simmons was. The expectation, however, for Wesley is this extra year to get into college. You're not going to be thrown on the field as quickly as a Colin Simmons, and you don't need to be, right? Texas needed Colin Simmons to walk in and be Colin Simmons. For Richard Wesley, because he was a younger cat, he can come in, get groomed a little bit behind the scenes, of course, get up to speed with his body, know what it's like to be in the college weight room, and then to hit the ground running when the position needs him the next year after. So I think that's the best case for him. And I think it's the best case for Texas for that seamless transition at the edge position.
I think one thing we forget too is the amount of depth that's in that edge room. We talk about the top end guys, obviously with Ethan Burke, Colin Simmons. You can even still mention Trey Moore in that conversation. But I mean, look, Colton Vasek has been productive when he's been on the field. It's just the being on the field part that's hampered him. He's just got to be healthy. He's got to play. Zeno Mazzulo made really big strides last season while he was just kind of baking in the oven, so to speak. Lance Jackson, similar kind of body type to Richard Wesley, kind of same type guy, just really athletic guy that can be a 3-down player. Whether you're talking about him playing as an in the line of scrimmage guy in a 4-man front or kicking down in a 3-man front, his ability to rush the passer, both those guys, and I'm talking about Lance Jackson now, it's going to keep them on the field. You just got a lot of Smith the Robo is another guy that we probably won't see this year, that he'll be redshirting and developing his body. It's a really deep, really talented edge room. But Rod, whether you're talking about edge guys or you're talking about off-ball linebackers, you can't have enough guys in your defensive front with the ability to rush the passer. And I don't know if I consider Justice Terry at this point an edge or just a kind of a defensive lineman, period. Not interior, not edge, whatever. You just can't have enough guys that can get after the quarterback. I know we got a lot of questions coming in about this take, and one thing I'll say, is Wesley still going to visit Ohio State? Whatever the case is, you've got to recruit him, and the staff will. This is when you get into these big-time recruitments. You recruit this guy like he's uncommitted.
Yeah.
So you recruit through the whistle because all those other schools that were after him, they're not going to stop. So just like we talk about Sark and his staff staying on guys that maybe they can flip down the road, the same applies to guys coming to Texas. So this is one of those that it's great that they got him, but, man, you better grab on tight and hold on and hope you can get it all the way to the end.
Yeah, the body types and the different skill sets they're recruiting on the edge, though, really exciting. Looking at the future of the edge position for Texas, it is really exciting. And I'm with you, though. I think ultimately they want natural pass rushers. They want guys who are. I've been saying it. You can improve pass rushing ability. I don't want to make it seem like you cannot, but I think if you want to hit the bullseye and get an elite pass rusher, a lot of that stuff comes naturally. The twitch, the BGO, the bend, a lot of that stuff is just kind of natural. And then you can refine all those things and you can, and combine them to make an elite pass rusher. Right? Colin Simmons, of course, has that kind of upside. But guys, he did all that as a freshman. A lot of that's natural.
Yeah.
Come on now. I mean, a coach, I'm sure, is going to take credit for it, and they should. Texas is doing a great job of developing. That guy could rush the passer for anybody right now. Okay, he can go to South Florida, he can go to Nebraska. He will still probably have double-digit sacks. Like, that guy's a freak, and you want as many of those guys as you can get on your campus. That there are certain things you cannot teach, and I truly think elite pass rushing ability is something that you can't teach. Now, I'm not saying you can't. Barron Sorrell got much better at pass rush as a player. And Le'Allen Clark has based his livelihood on the fact that you can get better. Not saying you can't get better. I'm saying if you want to be elite, a lot of that's going to be God-given. A lot of those things are going to be God-given for you. That's just the reality of it. That's why a lot of Sark's best pass rushers, he'll even admit they're the best pass rushers when they come in on campus. Anthony Hill was that case. He talks about with Colin Simmons. And those guys are great pass rushers as soon as they step on campus. Not saying you can't refine it or get better, but I think that's what they're bringing in, more and more of those types of dudes on the defensive line and especially on the edge. So I agree with you.
The Le'Allen Clark factor too, guys, is really big. And, I think the biggest endorsement he's gotten is what guys like Jack Sawyer and JTT had to say about him at the combine and throughout the pre-draft process, that he helped make them better rushers. I talked about it. There was a visit weekend when recruits were on campus, and Charles Amena, who was on campus, getting some work in and was staying late because Le'Allen Clark has coached him privately before he got to Texas. So, I mean, you're talking about some of the best pass rushers in football are seeking out Le'Allen Clark to help them privately with one-on-one pass rush moves. So if you want to get developed as an edge rusher, there might not be a better place to do it right now than Texas. And this goes back to something, too, we've talked about. I think you look at the trust this staff has in Le'Allen Clark. I think it says a lot that they hired him to be the edge coach and felt good enough about him as the hire to where PK could take a step back from being the edge position coach and being more of kind of a CEO, for lack of a better term, defensive coordinator. I can't let that go because that is so huge, because we know PK is a hands-on guy. He's not one of the coordinators at practice that, CJ, you've been out to practice. He's not a guy that just kind of sits back and lets everything happen. Like, he's right in the middle of drills. For him to be willing to give up a little bit of that, I think that tells you how this staff feels about Le'Allen Clark as a coach.
Yeah, certainly. And again, it's allowing Texas to enter doors that were probably previously closed to them, right? You look at Lamar Brown, you look at Richard Wrestley, Trenton Henderson, guys across the country are seeing the body of work produced by Le'Allen Clark saying, I kind of want to see what's going on there. Oh, Texas is winning games. Texas putting guys in the NFL, and I can get Le'Allen Clark's tutelage. Sign me up. So That's a big piece of the pie right now. And Jeff, I've I've been pretty vocal about this. I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well as you, Rod, but I think this front seven, with the level of talent that they're recruiting currently, I think it has the possibility to be the best front seven Texas has signed in a single class, at least in my recruiting history. I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts because I know I don't date back as long as y'all.
That's good.
And we'll still have to see how they figure it out. But look, you got 5-star Richard Wesley. You've gone out to Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. You're leading right now for Kendall Gerville, who we'll talk about a little bit later. And you just hosted 5 top 200 linebackers in the country over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Looking good.
That's nice. Good point.
That's a very
I have to do some research on that though, CJ. That's good though.
They've had some studs. Don't get me wrong, but right now, feeling pretty good.
Just for the volume of blue chip guys, like you think about the 2020 class, like Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Jalen Ford were all in that class. Probably not as big an impact, but if you're talking about front seven guys, you know, I mentioned him earlier, but like the 2015 class, like Charles Amenahu, Malik Jefferson, Anthony Wheeler, Brecken Hager, those guys were all multiple year starters at Texas, and 2 of them were draft picks. But to your point, CJ, Rod, I'd have to really, really think about it. But that volume of players at really interior D-line, edge, and at the second level, yeah, this would, if you hit on all your targets, I think this class would be it. Yeah. It'd be hard to argue against it.
Yeah. And it would, maybe that would be like the theme, the identity of the recruiting class, to CJ's point. That's what they want to ended up being the focus potentially of it. All right. Good stuff, guys. We got some super chats. So we got to do super chats first. I always say super chats can interrupt anything. I apologize, but we were in a good conversation there, in a good groove. So let's hit the super chat. Aloha. Aloha Traveler. Gotta put it on. Boom. There it is. Oh, hey. Thank you, Aloha Traveler. We appreciate the super chat. Very kind of you, Aloha Traveler. Aloha Traveler is always in a good mood. I think we all know why. He's always in a good mood. If I lived where he lived, I'd be in a good mood too. All right. How about a Sunday? Boom. What's the over-under now at total 5 stars that signed in December? Over under at 4. What are you taking?
I'll take the over.
Damn.
And it kind of depends on what overall ranking you're looking at, but Jermaine Bishop, borderline 5-star guy. Diabell, 5-star guy. Just landed 1 right there with Richard Wesley. So you're at 2.5 right now. You could be looking at a pretty healthy group moving forward. I know Texas is really in there for a lot of guys. You know, we're talking about Xavier Griffin. Tyler Atkinson was just on campus recently as well. Trenton Henderson, Texas, right there in the mix with Florida as well. I think this official visit this weekend really moved the needle in favor of Longhorns. We'll see if they're ultimately the leader. But those are 3 guys, again, all in the front 7 that you're doing a fine job for right now. I think you land with more. And that doesn't even include a Felix Ojo, a John Turntine, guys who Texas already felt good about going into this final visit weekend of the month of June. Best case scenario, Texas might be up to 7 and 8. I'm not even going to fear or even, kind of give that attention at all. But I think you land over more than 4.
I'll take the over.
Wow.
I'll take the over.
Jeff said it confidently too.
I mean, you're already halfway there.
Yeah.
With Wesley,
you have to hit what, about 30% of your remaining 5-star targets, and we've seen Texas already.
Even if you go conservatively, like one of John Turntine or Felix Ojo, I'll take the over.
Goes to your point, Jeff. You talked about your theory of the big boy recruiting, right? These heavyweight battles Texas is in. Interesting to see, when it's all said and done, how many of those heavyweight battles with all of these blue bloods that they end up winning. But if you end up getting more than 4 or 5-star recruits, I'm going to say it paid off for you. Endorsing that mentality paid off for you. Aloha Traveler, thank you very much. Very kind of you. Really appreciate all of your support, man. We look at you. We think of you as family. So
can I add one more thing here to what Aloha Traveler's asking? Sorry, Rod. And plus, it just gives Rod a few more minutes to keep the helmet on. I think when you're talking about 5-star guys, I look at 5-star recruits like they should be your no doubter. Like this guy's going to be a first-round pick in 3 years unless something just completely unforeseen happens.
Yeah.
My thing with 5-star guys is okay, and I think the industry's gotten better about who they make 5 stars. I compare it to like premium positions in the NFL draft. If you've got 5-star receivers, even like corners, it's a lot of perimeter guys. That to me doesn't hold as much weight as if you've got, blue chips in the trenches, both lines of scrimmage, pass, left tackles, a quarterback like Diabella.
I like this.
It was that the 2018 class that kind of personified that. You get all the defensive backs, you get excited, and you sit around and you're like, well, we still can't block the passer. We still can't rush the passer.
Yeah. And you know what? Like to that point, CJ, of all those 5-star guys, I'd have to go back and look at it. Who all finished as a 5-star. The only one that really panned out might have been DeMarvion Overshown, and he didn't even finish his career in the secondary at the position you recruited him at. You spun him down, and that's when he became an NFL prospect.
Yep. Your theory holds water, because look at, and this is anecdotally, I haven't done the research, but anecdotally, just think about how many prospects make the ascension from a lower level to a higher level and end up balling out, like a Scatterbo or Shadur Sanders can be one of those guys too. Hell, Cam Ward can be one of those guys. There are a lot more skill guys like that making that leap than there are linemen in the trenches.
100%. Yeah.
I think wide receiver, we see it more than any other position. I bet if we just thought about it, it's probably wide receiver and hell, it might be DB. If you look at the two positions that have at least more frequently than others, end up making that transition from a lower level to a higher level. So I agree with you. I think, to your point, if you want to talk about 5 stars, and that's not including the 5 stars, obviously, but just looking at basically evaluations overall and how many guys may end up ascending instead of descending to a lower level when they transfer. I think some of that adds a legitimacy to your argument that you won't find a lot of linemen like that. If you want to talk about the guys that hit those big 5 stars, if you want to talk about who's making the biggest impact, it'll probably be on the line and not necessarily at the skill positions, because you can find those skill position guys a lot of different places, and even at lower levels that can play an elite level. Shadur Sanders actually said this, whether you want to believe it or not. He said the biggest difference in where he played when he was playing at Jackson State and playing for Colorado was the trenches. He said simply, it's just the trenches. He said skill positions actually is not that big of a difference in his mind.
Yeah. He's probably talking specifically only about the defensive line that he faced, because his offensive line, both places, were pretty bad.
That's true. But I'm just trying to Jeff's point about what 5 stars are going to make the biggest impact. If you're going to get, like, if you could choose, all right, which 5 stars you want, you'd obviously choose quarterback, but take that out of it. If you choose a skill or trenches, take the trenches.
Yeah.
Take the trenches. Because the 3 stars at skill positions, there's a better chance they'll work out if you got a 3-star at a skill position rather than a 3-star on the line of scrimmage.
Bingo. Quarterbacks, trenches, that's the recipe for the 5 stars. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a pivot from that this year for Steve Sarkisian and his staff. You look at what Brandon Harris and the job that he's supposed to do, or has been doing a great job of, when it comes to kind of, trickling funds into that skill or those trenches. I think we're seeing that this year because look, I don't want to revisit the KJ Edwards recruitment, but we're seeing Jalen Lott maybe trend elsewhere at the moment. It was a fight for Texas, or is a fight to land a Caden Finley. You're looking around at some of the recruiting rankings right now. And I know rankings aren't the end-all be-all, but Cohen Brown probably not going to, jump off the page of a recruiting ranking. Chris Stewart, very much the same, but they're quality guys. And again, I think the point is Texas just saw one of the guys in the 2024 cycle run for 1,000 yards that you probably would have saw at the very bottom of your recruiting class. That's Trey Wisner. So if you're putting up big time numbers with your offense already, and that's the expectation is that, hey, your offensive scheme with Steve Sarkisian is going to work regardless of who you have out there.
Yep.
And let's kind of move some of those funds to where the big boys are and make sure that you have time to protect the passer and get after the passer.
I went back and looked at it. I looked at the 2018 class, and I just went and looked at 24/7 Sports. I looked at the top 247, and Texas signed 13 guys that were top 247 guys, which means that's your top end prospects. You guys want to take a wild guess how many line of scrimmage players were in that group?
Oh, that's good.
Legit line of scrimmage players.
You're talking about, so not front seven included in this, or just
not front seven included? I'm talking line of scrimmage players: edge, interior D line, offensive line.
Oh man, 3.
You hit the nail right on the head. Rod Junior Angulau, Keandre Coburn, Joseph Osai. That was it.
Damn.
Look at that. NFL, and unfortunately for Junior, that season-ending injury kind of probably deprived of him of an opportunity to go to the NFL as well.
And that's why I don't get too caught up in recruiting, like the class rankings, because I just feel like once you hit a threshold, like if you just look, all of these stuff, whether it's 24/7 Sports or On3, a lot of your classes, there's going to be an algorithm, there's going to be a numeric value attached to the class. And you can look at the numeric value and kind of see where the classes start to separate. Once you get to a certain threshold, like if it's, hypothetically, like Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, like if they're all right there, it doesn't matter to me if you're 1, 4, whatever. Like you've got a class at that point that you can go win a national championship with. But look deep into that class. Where are the blue chip guys? If they're line of scrimmage guys, like Texas is signed under Sark, then you're gonna have a chance to. That's building something with staying power when you take care of the lines of scrimmage. Go look at the programs that have been winning at a really high level for multiple years now. Obviously, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. I just mentioned 3 of them, and go look at how much line of scrimmage talent they put in the NFL. Like it's not. I'm not breaking any ground here. Like the data plays out. If you take care of the trenches, everything else tends to take care of itself if you're recruiting the trenches at a really high level.
Yep. Good stuff, guys. Another super chat here. Thank you, by the way. Aloha, Traveler. I appreciate the super chat. As always.
Rod's ready to get that helmet off, too.
And I'm comfortable in the helmet, but it's just a little hot. It's Texas, man. Bob, thank you for the super chat here. Bob says, howdy, OTL. My first super chat. Thank you. We appreciate that kindness of you, Bob. He says, when will we know what conference officials will come from for Texas at Ohio State? Split crew, SEC, and Big Ten. But please tell me they will never on the Big 12.
I can tell you this, Bob. They won't split. They won't do a split crew. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, it'll be one of the major power conferenges.
Typically,
I think we'll learn probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks in advance of the game as well. So it'll be closer to August.
Yeah.
Do they ever do split crews? They don't do that, do they? They never.
No. You remember the one time I remember them splitting a crew was the 2018 Big 12 championship when Texas and OU played that just sanitized version of Red River at AT&T. Mm-hmm. They did kind of you talk about oxymorons, the Big 12's all-star officiating crew. Like they basically took all the officials at the various positions, whoever graded out the highest during the year. That's who it was. That was a terribly officiated game. I was like, it wouldn't matter if Texas won or lost. Like, don't ever do that again. Like, just pick the highest rated crew and go with it. It's too big. That's just typical, slappy Big 12. Like, why are you going to gamble on your conference championship game? Like being just half cock playing with your officials. Typically what it happens to answer Bob's question though, since it's a home and home, what you'll likely see SEC officials probably do the game in Columbus, and then a Big Ten crew will come back and work the game in Austin.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds about right.
Unless Sark and Ryan Day agree that, hey, Big Ten crew in Columbus, SEC crew, but typically that's the way it works. Yeah,
that's a good point. They'll split it. They'll split that. Split the baby on that in that regard. Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that super chat. Very kind of you. Let's thank our sponsor before we move on. Our friends over at Rogue Shop, and if you are dealing with different ailments, and maybe it could be anxiety, maybe it's a sleep deprivation for you, maybe it's aches and pains, like myself, trying to battle Father Time and losing that battle, by the way. Our friends at Rogue Shop, they can help you out. They have a variety of different items, help you deal with a number of different ailments. They have it all from oils and creams, and flour and gummies and vitamins, bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. That's what our friends at Rogue Shop are all about. Use that discount code. You see it right there on your screen, on Texas, and you'll get a very special discount from our very special friends over at rogueshop.com. I actually had a member of the On Texas football family tell me they were having some issues getting to sleep and getting a good night of sleep, and they reached out and saw some items over at Rogue Shop and just tried them out, and now they sleep like a baby. They love the items over at Rogue Shop. So maybe that'll be the same for you. Check them out at rogueshop.com. Use that discount code on Texas, bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. We really appreciate the ongoing support from my friends over at rogueshop.com. All right. We got a super chat here. Before we get back to some of the other questions, and also I want to get to the official visitor list officially of the guys who did make it on campus this past weekend. Let's talk to Joshi, or let's look at Joshi's question. It says, Jeff, straight up, thank you, Joshi, for the super chat, by the way. Says, want to go back to your line of scrimmage argument, 100% correct. There are generally 5 to 6 higher level wide receivers in the portal from here on out. Totally agree with you. I've said that wide receiver is the deepest position in football. Yeah. At any level. You can find quality wide receivers all over the place. Sark has proven that. No doubt.
Yeah, so, go look at where Matthew Golden was ranked in the transfer portal. Again, you can go look at 24/7, On 3, ESPN, whoever's portal rankings. Go look at where it's not like Matthew Golden was a top 5 receiver in the portal. That's how deep that thing is. You can get quality. And, I'm not saying this is exactly how it's going to work out, but with your high school recruiting, if you decide that quarterback, offensive line, interior defensive line, and to an extent, kind of off-ball linebacker, basically kind of right around the line of scrimmage is where you're going to focus, your resources in recruiting. I think that's the staff telling you, hey, if we're short a receiver, we can go find one in the portal. Yep. If we're short a corner or safety, we can go find one in the portal. I wish they would have taken CJ's advice and just looked exclusively for kickers and punters in the portal, but it's a conversation for today. But yeah, I think it speaks to the fact that this staff continues to do a really good job in, understanding modern day roster building, and it's going to evolve. It's going to change. But for right now, Sark, Brandon Harris, J.M. Jones, the whole crew over there, they understand what the roster makeup of a national championship program needs to look like.
Yep. I've said it, and to Jeff's point, we learned it in the Super Bowl too, right? Protection, and we learned it from Texas, and we learned it this past season in the Super Bowl in 2 big games. We learned it on 4th and 13. Protection beats coverage, period. You got good protection on line of scrimmage, beats coverage, and you got to have the quarterback deliver the football. And we learned in the Super Bowl that pressure beats protection. You can have really good protection. You have the best quarterback in the league. Pressure will make him fold like a cheap suit. Saw with Tom Brady, seen with Patrick Mahomes. That recipe is tried and true. It is tested now at the highest levels. If you can bring the pressure, it don't matter how good that QB is. It don't matter. Brady, Mahomes, you can make them all look. You can make Superman look like Clark Kent with the right kind of pressure. And I think that's what they're banking on. And then, of course, on the O-line as well. I'm with you. So it just makes sense to reallocating the resources. To CJ's point, maybe there's been, hey, we got this as our, quote unquote salary cap of this much money we have to spend. Let's make sure we're spending it on what matters most, what's going to bring us the most wins and get us to a championship.
The other game you can look at too, Rod, from a Texas standpoint, go back to that Sugar Bowl against Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Protection played a big role in why Washington won that game and Texas didn't.
But also, I love this. This is good football theory. Sack avoidance was big in that game.
Yes.
How many times did they think they had Penix and he just ever so slightly shuffled 2 steps to the right?
Or they're like a half step late, Yeah. Like, I'm going to get there, and then boom, that thing is out.
You just feel the pressure and then make a great throw. That, I think, is also part of Sark's evolution. He's recruiting quarterbacks now that got some of that. All right, listen, Quinn, God bless Quinn. Quinn was damn good quarterback. I love Quinn. But Quinn didn't have that keen ability at sack avoidance, right? He didn't have that mobility and that ability to have second reaction, improvise. That wasn't his strength. I'm not saying he never did it, but it wasn't his strength. It might be a strength of Arch. I do think the game's evolving, and I think Sark's quarterback evaluation also kind of fits that he's looking at the game going, man, everybody's banking on pressure now. Everybody's investing in pressure. I need a quarterback that can definitely avoid the pressure when needed. And now you got a couple guys that can do that in your quarterback, in that quarterback room. So
that goes back to our conversation last week about them pivoting more to guys with basketball backgrounds. I think that might be what Sark's I don't know if it's actually the science that they're using behind the scenes, but you're potentially looking at 3 straight guys with basketball backgrounds, even with Arch not included in that.
That's Arch is a hooper. Arch is a big hooper. I remember Arch asked Coach Miller, could he use the courts? And of course, Coach Miller was like, hell yeah, you can come around anytime you want to. Imagine that. That, I think he was serious too. I believe Arch probably does, because they don't want Arch just hooping at Gregory Gym, do they?
He'd be playing kids like me, just leaving feet underneath him in the lane.
Yeah, you don't want some rando dude trying to big body Arch or something like that at Gregory Gym. You want to have that thing contained and moody. So I'm all about when Arch wants to hoop, let him hoop in the mood with the guys.
I think that's the big thing, right? Like Arch, look, man, Arch has proven he's got no problem balling with Gen Pop.
That's true.
This is sometimes where you need to save your quarterback from himself. Be like, I know you want to ball with Gen Pop, but let's do this in a little more structured environment.
Damn right. You don't play with your teammates, the guys who got as much to lose as you do in this whole damn thing. All right. Thank you, Josie, for the super chat. We appreciate that. All right. Let's get to before we get to some of the other questions, I know you guys got them, and we'll get to them, I promise you. Let's hit the official visitors from this past weekend. I don't want to obviously stray too far from. I know a lot of people are excited about recruiting, want to get updates on guys who officially were on campus, how some of those official visits went for the guys that were on campus. Obviously, we know a couple of them went really well because we did get a couple of commitments this past weekend. We'll also get to Rodney Cleveland, the commitment the Longhorns got the other commitment the Longhorns got this past weekend, other than Richard Wesley. But CJ, just throwing it to you, official visitors, guys that we know that's Matthew. That's why he's the best in the business. Great graphic. Give us just kind of synopsis real quick on these guys and how you think things went for the official visitors this past weekend.
Yeah, I thought Texas did a great job on the in-state guys, talking about Caden Finley, talking about, obviously, Chris Stewart announced after the official visit this weekend that he's shutting things down completely. That comes on the heels of an official visit to Tennessee a week ago. Obviously, Nicholas Robertson, Max Wright, they're already committed to the Longhorns, as is Jermaine Bishop. OTF still hearing some confidence from the Texas side about John Turntime, even with some movement from Texas A&M following his official visit to College Station. But Texas still feels like they're in the race for that one right up there in the front. And I think Texas on the back end of Kosi Okpala, Calvin Thomas, they're in great spots there. It's really, for me, it comes down to where they also feel good on the out-of-state on that front seven at the linebacker spot. Outside of things, Tyler Atkinson, I mentioned the linebacker position. Of course, the big news coming into the weekend was that he was training in the Austin area with Derek Johnson, the Longhorn legend. Of course, Tyler Atkinson is as good looking as they come at the linebacker spot in the 2026 class. He actually got connected with DJ via Anthony Hill. So a little bit of a Longhorn connection there as well. And when you talk to him, he said, yeah, man, Anthony Hill's my boy. I got to spend a lot of time with him over the weekend. Really interesting to hear because, of course, Anthony Hill has worn that green dot. He's been the quarterback of the defense for the Longhorns this past year, and that's exactly what was pitched to him over the weekend as well. Going back up to the top of the list at the defensive side of the ball, Kendall Gerville, we talked about him earlier. Look, he still says Texas is his number one school. They are the team to beat in his recruitment. That is key. Of course, Texas starting to rack up a lot of commitments on that defensive line, and Gerville certainly looking at the Longhorns as the place where he wants to be playing football at the next level. And finishing up with James Johnson. Look, when you bump out an ACC school for Texas here, that means something, right? Florida State, Miami, and the Longhorns in the race for James Johnson. I think there is something there for the Longhorns and James Johnson, but we'll see. Again, I mentioned that those defensive line spots are really starting to fill up for the time being.
Okay, Jeff, any thoughts? Who in this particular group of visitors? I don't know if that either you think that the Longhorns need to get kind of a guy that could really make this class for them in this group, or just someone that you've kind of felt good about in their recruitment with the Longhorns. Oh, Jeff might be muted.
I was muted and I was sorry. I was watching the basketball game. My bad.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
That's scramble.
You're a red-blooded American. That's all that is.
If the guy that I think answers a couple. Yes, thank you, Matthew. The guy that I think kills like multiple birds with one stone with what you just asked about. A guy like Kosi Okpala. Like I think you need something to happen at linebacker here pretty soon. And I think too. You talk about getting guys in your front seven defensively that have some pass rush ability. He's got that. So Atkinson and Griffin, those guys aside, Kosi Okpala's and plus, like it feels like Texas has been recruiting him for like the last 5 years. Like it seems like forever ago he got his offers. Like CJ, it's almost like when we talked about Chris Stewart doing the wide receiver breakdown here on the channel. Like Kosi Okpala is one of those guys. Like, oh yeah, he's still on the board. Like you just kind of forget about him a little bit, and it's no knock against him. It's just, you get excited about all these out-of-state guys. But I think Okpala, and I see a lot of people asking in the chat, hey, is Texas really going to take all these interior defensive linemen? Yeah, and if I don't see them right now, if James Johnson and Kendall Greville both want to come to Texas, I don't see them telling either one of them no.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to turn down a top 100, top 125-ish defensive lineman in the country? No, you figure out the rest later. So again, and I feel like I'm just hammering it home and beating a dead horse on front seven defense, but I feel like Sark has done a really good job of learning lessons and applying them. And I think one of the lessons from 2024 was, all right, what the defense that gave us the most problems was Georgia, and it wasn't schematics. It wasn't, they just had this great game plan. It was Michael Williams and Jalen Walker just whooped our tails up front.
They were
period, point blank. Yeah. And that's what – and Ohio State did the same in the Cotton Bowl. So they got a really good look at – they've come a long way rebuilding that defense, but they got a really up-close and personal look at, all right, what's the next step? Here it is. This is what we need to have happen.
Yeah. One other name to mention on the defensive line recruiting, of course, is Damari Simeon. Out of New Jersey, visited last weekend. Visit went very well on the side of what we're hearing over at OTF. So look, at some point, it's kind of the complete opposite of running back, right? You got too many guys perhaps trying to join the fold. You got too many guys recruited very well by the Texas staff, whereas at running back, well, it's pretty thin, right? So we'll see where running back goes from. Of course, we've put up some names on Texas football that Texas has been in contact from on the in-state side of things. We'll see if anything surfaces as the season nears. Something will have to eventually. But I saw the question earlier in the chat regarding upcoming decision dates. Let me pull up my list. There are a few decision dates still coming up. June 26th will be Xavier Crowell. Of course, he was at Alabama this past weekend, visited Texas on June 6th. The day after, June 27th, will be Malachi Lee, the big offensive lineman, 6'7", 320 pounds out of Hawaii. And then June 29th, that's Xavier Griffin, the big 5-star linebacker out of Georgia. Of course, he was on campus last weekend as well. Then you get into July 4th. And on July 4th specifically, it's Caden Finley, it's John Turntine, and it's Bryce Perry Wright. And then June 8th, Jalen Lott. June 10th, Lamar Brown. So a lot of decisions coming up in the next, 14, 17 days. Fireworks are expected on July 4th, but my goodness, it should be even more when it comes to these scheduled decisions. Of course, you could just see something pop up like a Richard Wesley where, hey, surprises are fun in recruiting.
I do like the fact, too, guys, that you got John Turntine on campus on a weekend where you had your two O-line commits on campus also. Nicholas Robertson and Max Wright were both on campus. So really just being able to get in that last pitch to John Turntine, because I think Texas probably feels has to feel about as good as they can. Going into this weekend, feel about as good as they can what they've done in Felix Ojo's recruitment. But John Turntine was one that, and it's going to be interesting. I think Malachi Lee, John Turntine's another one. Man, Michigan's really in the battle for some of these offensive linemen. But again, you're recruiting the right guys if Sharon Moore is an O-line guy at Michigan, and we know Michigan doesn't recruit scrubs on the offensive line. If Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia are going to be your primary competition for these guys, and with Turntine, it's Michigan and A&M, you're recruiting the right guys up front.
Yep. To your point about we've talked about how Texas may be reallocating resources to try to focus on certain position groups and certain positions, looking at where the game is evolving, obviously on the lines of scrimmage. I saw this stat the other day that in the 2025 league year, just looking at the NFL, because Sark looks at the NFL a lot too in terms of looking for solutions and roster construction, things like that. There are 8 interior defensive linemen with salary cap hits of more than $20 million now. In 2020, it was only 2. And so you start looking at it more and more. My point is more and more you're starting to see teams invest in interior defensive linemen. And it used to be it's like only on the edges where they're making those kind of investments. Now they're making those investments in the interior. There's certain guys they got to be, every down players, guys that can stop the run, and also guys that can rush the passer. But and Texas right now has a great reputation of producing those types of players. They have the longest streak actually in the current, in the draft, 3 straight years. In each of the last 3 years, they've had 2 interior defensive linemen drafted in each of the last 3 years. Nobody else has done that. Not Georgia, not Ohio State. Nobody.
Yeah. James Johnson, as we talked about earlier, said Texas was D-line U.
Damn.
Haven't heard that before from Texas, but that's part of the message that's being conveyed to a lot of recruits. 6 guys in 3 years, 2 in each of the last 3 drafts. That means something.
Yeah, each of the last 3 drafts, your starting defensive tackle tandem from the season has gotten drafted. 3 years.
I want to say almost your entire 2 deep are from like 2022 on the D line, except for maybe Ethan Burke was on that. Like they've all been drafted. Like I want to say, like the entire depth chart is.
They will be. They will be. We're Ethan Burke in that they will be drafted.
He'll be drafted too. I'm saying right now have been drafted already.
And I think for a guy, whether you're James Johnson or Kendall Graville, I think you look at that and be like, all right, look at what this staff has done. Even Kenny Baker now with what he did with Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton in that group last year. It's like, all right, every year Texas keeps bringing in a new starting defensive tackle tandem that kind of waited their turn. And those guys end up being NFL prospects. And plus, man, I think everybody's a little bit hungry when you've got a really deep rotation. I think it keeps guys fresh. CJ, I don't know if any of the guys you've talked to have said that or brought that up, but I think that's got to matter. I mean, I know guys want to play a lot, but I think there's something to be said for competition and especially for interior D linemen. When you get to the league, the fact that because of the way Texas does it with their rotations, you can have a lot of tread left on your tires by the time you get to the league.
Yeah, no doubt. And I remember hearing last year from a few guys saying, hey, we need one another, right? That was kind of the message between CJ Baxter, Jaden Blue going into the season last year, Trey Wisner. Hey, we need one another at defensive line, very much the same because, and Texas does a good job of not needing to play guys 50, 60 snaps per game. And I think that was one of the big numbers that we saw out of the portal this year. Is Texas was added Cole Bavard, Murad Watson. Some of these guys were upwards of 600 or 700 snaps last year. And you're sitting around looking at Texas like, hey, Alfred Collins played the most on your defensive line, probably had about 550. So, and that's in 2 or 3 more games. So they do a great job of rotating, keeping your guys fresh. And the big part of that is the benefit of having more gas in the tank late in games when you need to make those goal line stops, when you need to come up big in those key situations. They do a great job, and I think that message resonates very well with guys very early in their career saying, hey, I can also get on the field probably a little earlier here as well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Let's thank our sponsor, Rogue Shot, one more time, and then we'll dive into some of the other questions that the fans have here in the chat. Thank you to our friends at Rogue Shop. That's rogueshop.com, bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Make sure to use that promo code. You see it right there on your screen on Texas, and you'll get a very special discount from our friends over at Rogue Shop. They have it all from oils and creams to flour, gummies, and vitamins as well. Again, that's rogueshop.com. No matter what you're dealing with, maybe it's aches and pains, battling Father Time, maybe from your old playing days, maybe it's sleep deprivation for you, maybe it's just anxiety overall. Our friends at Rogue Shop have a variety of different items to help you deal with a number of different ailments. So check them out today, rogueshop.com. We appreciate them and their ongoing support of On Texas Football. Remember, use that discount code on Texas, and you'll get a very special discount from our friends at Rogue Shop, bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. We appreciate them sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. All right, let's get to some questions here, guys. How about this one? Oh, we actually got a super chat, another super chat. Thank you, Juan. Juan, super chat. We appreciate it. It says, it looks like, I think he meant Jalen Lott here. Yep, there is. To USC. What happened there? Oh, is that what? Whoop. Juan says it looks like Jalen Lott to USC. What happened there?
I just know it seems like it's been trending away from Texas in the last week or so, coming off the visit. But I don't know. His commitment is set for July 8th. So
yeah, no decision's been made. Of course, that was one that Texas hosted on July 13th. Obviously, Texas wants Jalen Lott in the class. The big thing is, look, USC's playing the game pretty hard this year. Oregon always has as well. Texas, no stranger to it, but sometimes you sense that splash, that kind of desperation in the cycle kind of outweighs a true need. What's interesting here, of course, we've talked about it. Texas, that reallocation of funds, perhaps you see a casualty of a guy like Lott because you're targeting so many out-of-state guys on the defensive front and beyond. So if that's the trade-off, again, I think Texas will be just fine if they're continuing to add guys on the offensive line, defensive line, and that front seven. But yeah, it's certainly feeling like things are trending away from the Longhorns. And let's not forget, USC was one of the first schools on him. His sister runs track out there as well. And they're doing a fine job in this 26 cycle, accumulating talent early on. 30 commits already.
Yeah, again, you look at Lincoln Riley having a tough time at USC. All right, where are you allocating your resources in terms of where your NIL dollars are going? You want to go spend $7 million on a tight end? Okay, cool. That's fine. That's not going to get you anywhere closer to getting to the top tier of the Big Ten, but you go ahead, you do you. And look, I'm not going to say anything negative about Jalen Lott. I've said it on the show, and I really believe it. Like, as a wide receiver, I know some people like him as a DB, but as a wide receiver, there's a little bit of that Des Bryant violent twitch to his game that I really, really like.
Yeah, that's like I said, you made that comparison the other day. I hadn't heard it, but that is if that is the case, I got to go back and watch the film, because then I would put him higher on my list if he's got Des Bryant violent twitch. Talking about that might be a higher priority for me, but I just love his overall game. I do think he got that could be an NFL player at either offense or defense. Just watch. He's got that kind of athleticism. Like, I don't know if it matters that much in terms of making it to the league, but wide receivers, where you get the big bucks these days, man. That's where the money is.
You can look for those kind of tools now, Rod. Now that Texas is playing big boy football and in big boy recruitments and playing for, stuff beyond the Alamo Bowl. I can look for violent twitch.
Violent twitch. Great term. All right. Derek Best here with a super chat. Thank you, Derek. Very kind of you. Says, who's everyone's either breakout player or underrated player to watch for next season? Thank you, Derek, for the super chat. I appreciate that. All right, so either a breakout or an underrated player to watch for next year.
Can I still call Trey Wisner my underrated player?
He's got 1,000 yards. No, you cannot.
He's so underappreciated, man. Just so underappreciated.
That's true, but you can't call him underrated. No way. Or breakout. He got 1,000 yards in the SEC.
I know. CJ, I don't know about you. Like, Murad Watson's an easy answer just because he's a newcomer. Look, if you're talking about the guys returning, I'll go with one that I brought up, man. If Colton Vasek is just on the field,
yeah,
I think his numbers are going to be really good. But is he going to be on the field? And nationally, that to me is what a breakout player like us in the market. Like, do we eat, sleep, and breathe Texas? Like, we know Colton Vossick's a player, but you're going to get to the end of the season and the talking heads on TV like, oh my gosh, where'd Colton Vossick come from? Well, he's been there the whole time, and we tried to tell you. But so I would, off the top of my head, for lack of a better answer right now, just because I brought him up earlier, man, a healthy Colton Vossick bolsters your pass rush, and it already might be the best pass rush in the country.
He's got one of the highest havoc rates on the team on defense. He does. Like, sample size aside, he obviously hasn't played as much as some of the other guys, but in terms of havoc rates overall, he's got one of the highest havoc rates on the entire defense. To Jeff's point, you just need him to play longer, play more.
I think a true breakout guy could be Wardell Mack. That's one that I've heard when I was down in New Orleans. I know that's where his hometown is. That's a guy folks are really excited. Obviously Arch takes the cake for excitement out of NOLA, but hey, Wardell Mack's a guy who was starting at the star spot this year in the spring. Obviously went to John Ehret out there in New Orleans as well. If he's a guy that wins that star spot with Jalen Gilbo perhaps moving out wide or even splitting time, that's a piece of the puzzle that maybe Texas didn't necessarily see the most out of at that star spot last year. I think that Gilbo played very well at times. I think that level of consistency, especially in run support, was ailing at times. If Wardell Mack could be that piece for you, there's a breakout candidate for you, because I can't keep choosing Jelani McDonald. I think that cat's out of the bag. You know how good he is, right? Wardell Mack is kind of that sleeper for me.
Yeah, no, it's hard to ignore the Jelani McDonald one. You've been on that one for a while. Yeah, that's good. Who's going to be the breakout player on this team? It's hard because I'm too close to it. So trying to look for a player that I like. Gunnar Helm to me last year that's the ideal breakout player. Like, basically everybody was like, Gunnar Helm, I'm not sure what he's going to do. He'll contribute, blah, blah, blah. And then he ends up being like one of the best tight ends in the country. Yeah. And obviously exceeded everybody's expectations. Like, who can be that guy?
Could Parker Livingstone be that guy?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, T'Vondre Sweat was like that. T'Vondre Sweat, everybody thought, he'll be good. He looks like he's developing. And he's like, boom, and he's like a national award winner. He's like, that's a breakout player to me. Like, who's that guy? I have a tough time figuring out who that player is.
I don't know to that level, because
often the chocolate one might be something on there. It's DeAndre Moore. Like, I feel like we never talk about the other. We talk about Ryan Wingo, LASIK surgery, all this kind of stuff. We talk about, other white chocolate. Everybody's excited about white chocolate, what he's going to do. But I feel like DeAndre Moore's get kind of like, I feel like we just all assume like, DeAndre Moore's he's gonna be all right, but he can't be a breakout because he was a starter already. But I guess if he has 1,000 yards, it's a breakout.
Yeah, I'll say, because offensive linemen don't get any love, but if we're talking about underrated player, if Cole Hudson takes to center, I mean, I got a lot of respect and love for Jake Majors, starting more games than anybody in the history of this football program during his career. And you never say what you want about Jake Majors. If you loved him, if you didn't have to worry about the center position for like the last 3 years at Texas. You just didn't.
No, not at all.
It's something you kind of you can take for granted pretty easily. But I think if Cole Hudson clicks at center and Neto clicks at left guard, both those guys, again, your interior offensive linemen aren't going to get any love, but those two guys have the potential to drastically change your effectiveness as a short yardage and goal line offense.
That's good. I like that. I like you're always thinking about line play, Jeff. I'll go with along the lines where Jeff threw it out there. Maybe Alex January. Nobody's talking about.
I like that.
That's good, Rod. Yeah, I like that.
Right.
I like that a lot.
They brought in. That's what I'll go with. I'll go with Alex January. Thank you, Juan. That was thank you for that, Derek. That was a good question. Juan with a super chat here. Thank you, Juan. We appreciate this super chat. Says, what happened with Paris Melvin? There are other sites he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't make it in. Didn't make it into campus this weekend for his scheduled official visit. Of course, Texas was recruiting him as a true safety out of Cypress, out of the Houston area. Change of plans last minute. He just didn't make it into campus. Of course, Texas did host a safety out of the Houston area, and that's Chase Calicut. Of course, there is that North Shore connection there, Rod, with Mark Orfe and Chase Calicut. Sounds like Texas did a fine job with Calicut. And, of course, continue to monitor Devon Benjamin out of Westlake Village out in California. So we'll see. But right now, I think Texas is kind of piecing together that secondary puzzle pretty quickly right now.
Man, I brought him up earlier, but since you brought up Chase Calicut, CJ, I really hope Coach Paula and Chase Calicut are in the Texas class at the end of the day, because like I said, it feels like Texas has been recruiting those guys since they were maybe in the 8th grade. Like, I don't know, it's been a long time that both those guys have been prospects on the radar. So I'd like to see him in the Texas class, just because they seem to have invested a lot of time in Texas and vice versa.
I feel like Jerry's been talking about Apollo for a long time, though. I do feel like that. To your point, Jeff. I feel like I watched some film with him for a long time. So, but he's a fantastic player.
Hey, real quick, Rod, Chase Calicut fits the mold we've been talking about of guys that like position flex.
Yeah, 6'3".
Guys. Like, well, what is he going to be? A safety? Is he going to be a linebacker? Well, who cares if he's one of your best, 14, 15 guys on defense? Does it really matter? If he's a safety or linebacker, especially like if Jelani McDonald makes something out of this big nickel role, then okay, maybe that's Chase Calicut's future.
Yeah, and look, I don't think they had the same physical build, but Jelani had that same kind of question. Where's he going to be? Is he going to be a linebacker? Is he going to be a safety? Could he stick at corner? And I know that there were several different coaches in that Texas defensive room saying, hey, we want him in our position room. Ultimately, we found a nice spot for him back deep at safety, spin him down to that slot, that big linebacker as well. So if that's ultimately going to be the piece for you, Texas has had success sticking guys at corner, at nickel, at safety, or even at that safety to linebacker spot with the Marvion Overshone. And we've seen that here and there with Michael Taff as well.
And I have confirmed that it is not by coincidence that they're looking at all these position flex guys. It is by design. It is part of Sark's grand vision. He looks at another dimension they can add to the defense that will help make us more flexible and malleable. And as a football theorist, I thought that would be the case, but confirmed it with the man himself that it is by design. So all of these prospects are looking at, when you're like, man, he's got position flex, he's got gap flex, he can move him around. That is what they want. Because he understands, to Jeff's point we talked about this on Football Theory, so a little shout out to Football Theory, bump that, about different trends. And Jeff talks about the hybrid spread era that we're in, where teams are trying to just find mismatches and matchup advantages across the board, because you deal with all these specialized defenders all the time who are put in very specialized situations against different personnel groupings, and defenses try to match that. More and more guys like Sark are trying to expose mismatches in that way. Well, if that is the case, then you want to build a defense that can minimize those mismatches and that can decrease the disadvantages that you have. And that's what these flexible position flex players do. They just offer you more solutions. Also, Sark said, I'm trying to get my best 11 on the field. I got to. And I can't do that if I got too many guys that only play this position. And when you're recruiting this many big time players and stacking them to the point where CJ and Jeff brought up, when you're stacking them, they want to play. So the more position flex guys, hey, I can put you in this role. You know what? Go play this position for now. And then, next year we'll move you around here and do this and do certain things. So you need not only position flex with the defenders themselves, but you need multiplicity in the scheme, which is why Johnny Nansen coming to the table with all his exotic ideas is very important, because you do have a big nickel package now. You say, no, Jelani McDonald, you can play. I got a big nickel for you last year, even though we were looking for a role for you. Or, you know what, we got a 3D tackle package. We play 3D tackles out there. We got a bear front there we run. Oh, we got a NASCAR package. Oh, we got a dime package. You know what I mean? You can find all the different roles for all of these very versatile defenders. It is by a grand design. And by the way, I love it. It shows you that Sark is a football theorist. He's looking at the evolution of the game. When you look at the evolution of the game, the future is more positionless players on defense. Not necessarily on offense, that's an advantage, but on defense, they're almost a necessity these days.
Yeah.
Have those guys.
I think the perfect example to look at, Rod, is Kirby Smart. I think if you had Kirby Smart, hey, go pull your depth chart, pick a random Alabama game in 2014, pull your defensive depth chart and compare it to your defensive depth chart at Georgia in 2024. There are guys on that Alabama depth chart is probably as good as they were, may not have a starting place in college football in 2024. Yeah. But then you get to like Mike Williams, like Jalen Walker. Is he a linebacker? Is he an edge? Like, yes. Yeah. I just want him on. He's one of my best 11. I want him on the field somewhere. Yes.
Yes. I like that. What is he? Yes. Just keep saying it. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick in the chat, Rod, a lot of people are giving Ethan Burke some love when we're talking about breakout player or underrated player. The more I watch it, the more I look. We got on Sark, and rightfully so, about the toss call against Ohio State. I think the worst high leverage play call anybody had in a Texas game last year was that 4th and goal run that Colin Klein called in the A&M game. Like it was that very rarely have I ever seen like a run telegraphed to be blown up in the manner with which that was blown up. Like when you see that when it's 4th and 1, you see the tailbacks lined up like 9 yards deep in the backfield. I'm like, man, I really hope they're not handing that off. And then you see they're handing it off. You're like, well, thanks for playing, A&M. It was fun while it lasted.
No, you're right. I thought they had some freaky plan. I was like, oh, they're gonna do something crazy here. It's gonna be some wild. Nope, they just handed it off. It's like, okay.
Like in the press box, like I couldn't even celebrate it because like I was just so dumbfounded. I'm like, wow, they actually really went with the handoff 6 yards deep, and like Ethan Burke just went straight to the football. So I guess props to the Aggies for Aggieing it up in a high leverage situation. But yeah, that was. And great for Ethan Burke. I mean, Rod, you know what it's like. You make a play in that game, you're a made man forever.
Yeah. No, and Ethan Burke, I'm with you. I can't wait to see if he ends up being the guy they bump inside on that NASCAR package. Because I'm telling you, for Barron Sorrell last year, it was really eye-opening to see him evolve as a pass rusher when he was bumped inside on some of those situations. I want to say, oh man, out of his sacks, I want to say half of his sacks, more than half of his sacks came in the NASCAR package for him. I really helped him out. Ethan Burke can potentially be that guy. I'm trying to think who else would be. I guess Justice Terry could probably do it too. Bumping somebody inside, doing some freaky stuff like that. But anyway, but getting back to it, let's answer a few questions. I know we're close to the end of our live stream. So we'll go kind of rapid fire here. Just kind of throw out questions. You guys give me quick answers on them. We'll try to hit as many of them as we can. How about this one from E. Kim? Does Texas take James, Johnson, Gergville, and Simeon if they all want in on the class?
Who would you turn down?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you turn down any of the three.
I don't think so either.
And look, I think Texas has to take a big defensive line class on the interior this year. Does that mean they take 5? We'll see. But 4 feels right. And I don't know who of those 3 you turned down. The thing is, look, I know you took 3 last year, but it's really 2.5. Because you don't know if Justice Terry is going to be that inside guy, right? He's only about 265, 270. If he gets to 290, hey, that's great, but that's years away, right? 20 pounds is not going to add over the next 2 or 3 months. So, yeah, you feel great about Josiah Sharma, You feel great about Myron Charles as well. The staff loves them. They had great springs developmentally, but you're still in a spot where you got to start stacking bodies on the interior, and you don't want to go out adding 3, 4, 5 defensive linemen every single cycle in the portal. That's just not how you consistently build. I know Texas is fortunate enough to be able to go do that, but you've got to start with the high school ranks, just as we've seen with the offensive line, just as we've seen with wide receiver and running back this year. You need that depth year in and year out. Texas right now, they're going to have to take 4 on the inside, and those 3, I don't know how you say no to any one of them.
If you're an interior defensive lineman at Texas, and Rod, this is why I like your Alex January pick earlier. If you're an interior defensive lineman who has the eligibility to be back in 2026, this is a pretty clear sign that you need to have a fire lit under you, or you may not have a place at Texas for that 2026 season. Because look, I love loading up on the line of scrimmage like I talked about. You can only allocate so many scholarships to interior defensive linemen. And just like we talk about freedom of movement for players in the portal era, and it's great. Well, coaches have freedom of choice too. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, that's good. I agree. I think you take them these days because they're hard to find. Really top level D tackles, man. You can stockpile some of them, get them. And I agree with CJ. You don't want to be in the transfer portal looking for D tackles. No. Wide receivers, yes. D tackles, no. Jason Horn for Life says, is Nick Brooks going to play this year? That is a good question. I know they loved him because I was over there a couple of times, like for pro days and other events. They love him. Like his name came up several times unsolicited, like, ooh, this guy Nick Brooks. So they like him. I just don't know how quickly he's going to be on the field. That's another question entirely.
They're going to have to get him on the field at some point, right? You'd like what you saw last year with Trevor Gooseby, but you don't want that same kind of procedure to take place where you don't feel confident enough with a Trevor Gooseby being thrown into the fire against an A&M, a Clemson, a Georgia, right? Credit to Trevor Gooseby because that was a heck of a job that he did late in the year. But you want to feel like you have that confidence in any one of your backups being able to start any given game. And I think Sark even mentioned later in the year that he felt like it was a bit of a malpractice on his end to make sure that all of his guys were prepared to the highest of their possibility going into that game. So you're going to have to see him early. And I would look at those 3 games immediately after Ohio State. And I think that you're going to see more blowouts this year with the marriage of a higher scoring offense with Arch Manning and this defense in the front that it has, allowing guys deeper into games to get in that you normally wouldn't see.
Yeah, I will be very surprised given what Texas has done with guys like Cam Williams is one that comes to mind. I'll be very surprised if Nick Brooks is not on the field goal PAT team just to get his feet wet, give him something to do. That way he's invested in the game and, just bring him along that way.
Yep. I like that. Oh, we got a super chat here. Thank you, Gray Man, for the super chat. This is a good question. When are we getting a War Daddy at running back? Everyone knows we don't have one. Every site has the position rated about the lowest of the groups. Oh,
man, I think you got one. He blew his knee out in camp last year. Man, look, for Nick Saban to go on the record multiple times as saying in 2023 CJ Baxter was the best running back he saw, that to me holds a hell of a lot more weight than what anybody in our industry has to say about the running back outlook at Texas.
Yep, he did say that. After his freshman year, he said that. I think when you get a healthy CJ Baxter, I think you're fine there at running back. Now, I don't know if he's talking about just recruiting classes here or talking about the position overall, but once you get a healthy CJ Baxter, I think you actually have an embarrassment of riches potentially at running back if you develop a young Jerry Gibson and you can learn to trust him and some of the other guys. So whether you want another Bijan at running back, you want another, Jay Brooks, first round caliber running back. CJ Baxter was that guy before he got hurt. And he's still right now projected. People still haven't projected to be a running back that could be one of the top running backs drafted coming out in 2026. Actually, I've seen several of these weird, way too early mock drafts. So if you want an elite prospect at running back, I think Cedric Baxter was that guy. I'm with Jeff. I think the buzz has died down just because of the injury, and we don't know when he's going to be back to full strength.
But I've seen enough Texas football in my lifetime to look at guys like Deontay Foreman, Jonathan Brooks. Texas has had enough NFL running backs produced of guys that weren't very highly recruited. I mean, go look at how many power conference offers Jonathan Brooks had. I think Texas might have been his only one. CJ, he might have had U of H, maybe. But yeah, that was a great eval on Jonathan Brooks. So
yes,
running back is one of those positions where I really think, like I said, if you get a Bijan or something like that, then clearly, yes, you go try to get that guy. But I think once you get past that elite special tier, kind of like in the NFL, I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Hey, Rojo. Rojo's a
converted quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. But thanks for the question, great man. We appreciate that one. Clint says, who most likely fills the Keelan Robinson, Silas Bowden role this year? The role of a boutique, explosive offensive player. And Silas Bowden really never filled that role. I think Keelan Robinson definitely filled that role. They never put Silas Bowden quite in that role like I thought they would.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So I think Keelan Robinson definitely filled that role. I don't know if Texas has that boutique player right now on offense they would use in that manner.
Here's the thing: do they need?
No,
one?
they don't. They don't know it. They don't.
Yeah, I don't think they need one. I honestly there's a couple things to look at there. I think one was Silas Bowden with Isaiah Bond's injury. Silas Bowden they needed him to actually play like receiver snaps, so that was a big part of it. The other part too, I don't think. Look, if you get a unicorn like a Jordan Whittington or like Keelan Robinson had a really unique skill set, then yeah, you have a role for them. But I don't want to say you have to have. That's when you start getting yourself in trouble as an offensive coordinator. Say I have to have that guy. Well, I mean, okay, but you're gonna go square peg round hole with somebody that can't fill that role the way a Jordan Whittington or a Keelan Robinson would. I'd rather
role for him. You could say now he made that role for Keelan Robinson.
Yeah, I think there are different guys. Whether it's, I think Trey Wisner can do some of that. Like have some different. That's not just straight up like running back plays. Nick Townsend could be one of those guys. Michael Terry could be one of those guys. So I don't think it's necessarily like the speedy, elusive slot receiver. I think it's just different guys in terms of Sark looking at them saying, okay, this guy's so unique. We can do a lot of different things to maximize that skill set.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head right there, because he did it with Bijan. That was proven. They played more 21 personnel, 2 back sets with Bijan and Rojo, but that was based on those guys being special and unique. He would put Bijan in the slot to run. He had Bijan running seam routes.
I told you how good his hands were, Rod.
Dude, he running good seam routes down the field. He ain't doing that with nobody else. Jaden Blue. Look what he did with Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue running wheel routes down the field. He can do linebackers. So to me, it depends. He looks for a skill set to inspire him. And Keelan Robinson inspired him a lot of those boutique plays. It will happen with Michael Terry. And I agree with your Nick Townsend one. I think it'll happen with Nick Townsend at one point too. I think we might get 13 personnel one day. Yeah. I don't know if it'll happen next year. I hope it might happen this upcoming season. But I think maybe like 2026 with Archman, you get 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, injuries. You get Nick Townsend thrown in there, and you got your Jordan Washington. I think it might happen. But
I know they recruited Trey Wisner with one of those roles in mind. But at this point, it's like, well, he's a 1,000-yard rusher. Why am I gonna take him away? Like, he's clearly he's more valuable to your running back mix than he is trying to just figure out unique ways to get in the football. You have other guys on offense that can fill that role.
Yep, I agree with that. And as long as you keep recruiting these unique athletes we're talking about, you'll be able to inspire creativity with Sark and innovation with Sark to try to figure out a way to weaponize those guys. All right. Thank you guys for all the super chats. Really appreciate your participation. We missed so many good questions. We had a lot of great questions, but I am long-winded, as well as my man Jeff Howe and CJ. So they put us on the live stream together, and we just like to talk way too much. So thank you guys for all the great questions. I'm sorry we missed so many of them, but if we missed them, you can direct them to the guys at Coffee and Football tomorrow morning. Jerry and Bobby will be on with you. Actually, I know Bobby will be on there. Maybe Jerry. We might have another crew on there as well. But either way, direct those questions to the guys at Coffee and Football. We'll also have the winning drive with CJ Vogel, myself, and Coach Bob Shipley. That'll be tomorrow at 3:15 as well. And if anything breaks in that time period, trust me, in between those live streams, we got you covered here at On Texas Football, at OnTexasFootball.com. Speaking of OnTexasFootball.com, if you are looking to get even deeper, all right, inside the program and get even more of those insider nuggets from CJ and from Jeff and from Bobby and from Jerry and Blake Monroe, boom! That's why Matthew's the best in the business. Use that code OTFOG. You'll get a year subscription to OnTexasFootball.com, $39.95. We talk about a lot of stuff here on the YouTube platform. It's a fraction, maybe a third, probably a quarter, close to a quarter of what is actually covered on the website and all the detailed coverage that those guys bring you. So you want to be an OTFOG at OnTexasFootball.com. All right. Thank you to our sponsor, RogueShop.com. Really appreciate their ongoing support and sponsorship of our Sunday night live stream. Thank you to all you guys out there for joining us on Sundays. You know, Sundays are really precious. All right. They're sacred because right before you had to get to the work week on Monday. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to spend with us and talk a little Texas football. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's a real MVP. Thank you, CJ. We appreciate all your expertise. Jeff, thank you for joining us on Sunday as well. And for Jeff and for CJ and for Matthew, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.
Go Pacers.